Hail and well met to the reader of this tale. This venture is titled The King in Green, and was transcribed by Ventures League scribe Loretta Shoram, she, her, and originally written by Senzo Yakamura, he, him. This transcript is written to the best memory and ability of the scribe. To all who read this record, be mindful of the horrors of the flesh, mutagenic, visceral, and soul forms, as well as the depravity of apathy and the deprivations of the wilds upon the human body. Hearken these words and remember them for all those that were, are, and shall be. In the 1618th year of the sun's victory, 5026 AR, the halfling human adventurer by the name of Han Li Yan, the water sealer, he, him, witnessed in the jungles of a country no record is made of, a funerary procession. It was a hot day in the jungle, full of biting insects and stinging sweat that weighed down the body with the sheer immensity of the rivulets of salty water. Hans stripped down to only his lower underwear and rested under one of the large curling trees he first believed would grab him as the noose branches of the Dole Valley do. His small pavilion did little to shield him from the heat, for it seemed like the fire came not from the sky, but from the hot soil itself. Gods, did he hate this part of the egg! His companions had been scattered by a rainstorm about a week prior. Today was his first foray from the coast into the pathway he found wandering along the beaches. He was alone entirely, with only the clothes he wore, some rice he has since fried so mold doesn't get to it, and some kit. The heavenly venturer had felt the strings of loneliness and despair tug at the back of his skull into madness. All around him was nothing but green. Even the water was green, and home to fish that nearly swallowed him whole were it not for quick stabbings. During the day he slept to avoid the mounting heat. Morning and dusk were his travel hours, with day being his time of sleep, and night being his hours of vigilance against unknown beasts and horrors. On that day, sometime past the zenith of the Occidentalis sun, there was a slow crash through the forest, and a low, dirge-like grumble that resonated through the earth. The venturer grabbed his sword and shield and readied himself for whatever crashed through the jungle. To victory or death, he believed. Through the bush, he saw a large gray body, bedecked in regal red carpets trimmed with gold. 4 tusks curled downwards from its head, the long nose protruding from its face like a worm. An elephant. Atop the creature was a hulking body of a blackish-blue skin, now sallow, and reddish-brown fur. The mass was draped in golden jewelry, green robes, and wielded a gold-plated iron rod with bands that was squared at the head. Its eyes were closed thoughtfully. The elephant it was atop of moved slowly and kept its head bowed in reverence. Suddenly, a shrill scream, then another and another pierced Han's ears as a swarm of sorrowful monkeys and apes crawled, flew, leapt, and burrowed to either side of the gargantuan pair. Behind them, too, was a number of mortals bowed in reverence, crawling upon their hands and knees while chanting in low unison. Their dirge sent a deep ripple of fear into Han's chest, and he shrank into the bush and held still. The shadow of the creature loomed large atop the elephant. As it moved past Han, the smell of death wafted into his nose, and he knew all at once this procession was a funeral. Han had seen giants before in his life, and heard tales about them, though many were all but extinct in his home of the man-big kingdom. It looked all too human, yet closer to the red-furred apes, the peoples of the verdant called orangutan. It swayed back and forth with every step of the elephant in an almost lifelike motion. Its long, shaggy hair was like a flame cast in shadow. The venture calculated its height to be about 16 feet, a marvel of a beast. The noisy procession passed Han unbothered. If mortals traversed the wilds without weapons, then the trail from whence they came must be safe. Then again, a giant elephant and a horde of shrieking monkeys never hurt. It was decided in his mind by instinct that Han would follow the path the mourners left in the opposite direction and find wherever they dwelled. If the immortals of this land were kind, the trail would lead to a goodly settlement. Anything of use was packed, while the rest was left to be consumed by the earth. The day ended with the setting of the sun and the lighting of a torch for the venturer. Wherever he was, it was unknown to him, so Han, against his experience, continued on. Foreign beasts sounded in the jungle. Dread set in, and the face of the dead giant emerged from his thoughts, like it was slowly coming out from the darkness in uncanny horror. He imagined terrors no heavenly person had ever laid eyes on, and how they may devour him. Each step was shaky, uncoordinated, over the rough terrain. In the burning of the calves, Han knew his pace hastened, and the tension of his clenched muscles, poised to run, slowed him. A deadly combination. A terrible bellow roared from the trees and struck Han like a spear of sound. The jungle crashed, trees breaking, leaves crushed underfoot, deadfall splintered. Han ran hard and fast, dropping all but his water, torch, and weapon. Everything turned into a blur. Every popping blister on his foot did not slow his gait, and the intense burning sensations in his weighty body was doffed like armor. Even when his torch began flickering away, the venture did not stop. From behind, the crashing kept chase and held a steady, violent pace. In a moment of confusion, Han jumped and tumbled onto the ground. In his rolling, he dropped the torch which illuminated the space a few feet away from him. He drew his sword and shouted out of fear and a primal desire to dissuade the attacker from striking. Whatever gave chase stopped when it drew near to the fire. A growl of frustration, then a hiss of anger moved back and forth somewhere in the shadows. Without hesitation, the venturer moved closer to the torch. The forest crashed quietly. Whatever it was had fled. Rest and fire was in order. Despite the ache in his body and soul which made him cry, it was hard to sleep. Every time Han's eyes closed, the instinct to wake and fight took over as he thought he felt an insect crawling on his body. Worst of all were his potentially dead comrades' faces popping into his thoughts. Already he was beginning to find life without his companions hard. In the half-slumber, reality faded away into blissful return before Han awoke again to find his companions dead and himself in a foreign land with nothing more than the clothes on his skin, fire, and a weapon. It was the lot of the venturer to have nothing more than that to drive back the horrors of the wilds and immortal realms. But they did not do it alone. Dawn broke, causing a million noises to startle the venturer, whose bloodshot eyes widened. He began walking along the trail again. A pang of hunger twisted his stomach, but worst of all was how his clothes clung to his skin like a film. It was humid in the forest. The mud caking beneath his feet soaked clean through the wrappings on his feet and formed shoes out of his sandals. The funeral path traveled for miles through the dense undergrowth. To distract his tired, hungry, mournful mind, Han thought about the dead giant he saw atop the elephant, the hundreds of monkeys, and the monks. He had never before seen such a thing. At last, he saw salvation in the form of a large stone temple, covered in moss and vines painted with red. Each of the large ribbed towers, capped by a smooth pyramid, had structures of a great and awesome giant, grabbing a dragon by its neck and tearing off the head. Such a sight instilled fear in the venturer, for the dragon was the ancient elder most revered and feared, taken as a symbol of imperial dominance. Up the small steps he went, until he entered the dark corridor of the temple. To either side of him were large hallways, completely blackened. In front of him was an open courtyard with a cursed garden of curated fruits. A mortal voice said a word in a tongue Han had never heard. He turned around, frightened, and drew his sword. An old woman with long gray hair tied around her waist, dressed in red robes, stood before him. Her wrinkled old face was soft and calm. Gently, she led Han to a bathing room. It felt good to have washed off the stench and grime of the wilds from his flesh. The scrape of his dried hands peeled off rolls of dead skin and dried mud. His sweat rolled off his skin like the tears down his face. In the depths of the hole where he bathed, he cried under the water, hoping his sobs would inhale enough water to drown him. Survival instincts prevented him from drowning. The venturer dried himself off, then dressed again. The old woman waited for him. She took him through the temple where monks tended the gardens, murals, and daily chores. All upon the walls were artworks of vibrant colors. At the end of the temple, the old woman led Han to a truly massive room, born more of root than rock. In the very center was a large, circular slab. Everywhere except the polished stone ramp and slab was roughly chiseled and smashed away. Sunlight streamed in from above, illuminating the graven images of apes. Each massive head was regal and painted with blue, black, gray, and reddish hues. Their cold eyes stared at Han, and he felt the judgment of their authority. The old woman pointed to the heads, then to the slab. Her eyes closed, and she slumped her head down before walking to the opening they entered from. The water sealer had stepped inside enough throne rooms to know the beast he beheld was their god, now dead and taken to be buried. She motioned to the doorway, a passage normal for a human, and clamped her hand closed, then opened them before pointing to the empty slab. Her flattened hand met softly with the other, closed in a fist. Han nodded his head in understanding and waited. For a decade he waited. In that time, he learned how to tend the garden and fulfill the duties of the monk. He learned their tongue and customs. He knew even from the first day he would not return to the lands he was born of. A day came when the terror made itself known. A quilled tiger devoured the old man, Daimakaish, and the oldest monks. For a decade he waited. In that time he learned how to tend the garden and fulfill the duties of the monk. He learned their tongue and customs. He knew even from the first day he would not return to the land he was born of. A day came when terror made itself known. A quilled tiger devoured the old woman, Daimakaish, and the oldest monks. It brazenly leaped into the temple and devoured all it could. Villagers from hidden groves came to the temple and prayed for salvation. Adventurers rarely came by this way, for they were occupied eternally with a horde of devilish spiders far to the west. Han swore to slay the cat as he drew his blade once again, then donned wooden armor. With a torch and blade, the water sealer cleared a ring around the temple, then cut stakes to put everywhere. One would be amazed how nobody has made defensive perimeters and yet survived. The king of the land, they all said, protected them. Alone did Han clear paths from village to village. What little knowledge he had of the land or beasts he took from the people about him. But he knew tigers. His grandparents, originally from the highlands of Julian, hunted the winged tigers. They all were the same, he found, solitary ambushes with a ferocious power and wrath. A tiger would attack anything it believed it could kill, but never a venturer. They knew of their dead that were hacked apart, skinned, gored, dissected, and mutilated for trophies and materials. And Han was a venturer, bloodied and scarred. Like two duelists circling each other, Han and the tiger exchanged blows. One day the tiger may kill a person, and another it scampered into a thick brush with a spear in it. Day by day, blood pooled, but so too did an audience of monkeys. They jeered, hollered, and gasped like a captive crowd, eager for the next act. Every clash soon felt like a mantis battle, with tiger and mortal lives being wagered on. Han's wounds were many, and in the wet heat of the jungle, a rot set into every slash he had to scrape clean then scald. He grew weaker with every duel, but so too did his quarry. Their attacks were frantic now, and it took both a moment to build up the want to fight upon seeing the other. A day came soon when beast and human beheld the other and knew death was the hour. Both roared like the shaking earth and leapt at each other with such strength the debris about their feet was thrown up. Tiger struck first, pinning down Han and clawing away his armor. In retaliation, the venturer wildly swung his sword, trying to catch flesh. Wood splintered in every direction, and Han's breast was exposed. The cat slashed deep into his flesh, curling its claws, then raking down. Tunnels of bleeding flesh and cloth went down his chest to his midriff. Han pushed and awkwardly stretched to stab or slash his foe. An exchange of roars and shouts of pain joined a chorus of excited monkeys flailing about the trees from the thick branch to thick branch. Leaves fell around them in large clumps. The cat leapt off from him and sunk its fangs into his shoulder. The venturer was being dragged away, and as he did so dropped his sword. He grabbed a thick pale tree and held tightly until his knuckles were white with effort and his nails peeled away from his fingers. Han grabbed a knife on his back and stabbed. That tiger dropped its prey and slashed away the rest of his armor. Worst of all sensations was the quick yet dull pain of one's body going into shock from when a claw or a fang ravaged it. He felt warm from the hot blood gushing from his wounds, and the heat of battle coursing through his muscles. Han staggered like a dancer to his weary feet. Above him and the tiger, a raucous crowd of hooting simians scratched and called. When the tiger charged again, Han fell onto his back. Feline fury whimpered in the pain when a deep bellow silenced the forest. A flash of shadow and screams, then nothing. Delirium overcame the venturer, who awoke days later, wounded but bandaged. His body covered with more cloth than the bound priests of Wushu. Nature had returned to its tranquil chaos. The monks went about their duties without fear. A pungent, sweet stench flooded his nostrils. Fruits filled every hall and every room of the temple. More time passed before Han could walk uninhibited. During this time, monkeys wandered in and out of the rooms. The little monks, his fellow mortals called them. The children of a god as much as they were tenders. Their mischief was laughed at and welcomed like the playfulness of a toddler. When Han could, he walked about the temple and saw in the deepest chambers a bulbous but strong body bedecked in jewelry and matted hair the color of fire. Its blue-black face stared with the kindness and wisdom of an elder and the strength of a youth coming to age. Its large, dark eyes were hooded with sage tiredness. A large arm, like a tree, slowly grabbed a bunch of fruit and brought it to a quiet face. The yellow-black fangs, rotted from sweets, burst the fruits. Fear coursed through Han's veins like a river, freezing him in place. In life, these beasts were more imposing than any he had ever beheld. It raised its hand welcoming, then returned to feasting. This was the last night Han would spend at the table, when fostered. Once again on the path, the venturer set forth to the coast and began walking for many miles. Along his travels, he fought crustaceans that slithered like eels, and a colorful bird the size of a horse that spat sticky acid which cost the venturer his left foot. Han was found by the magic Erhu ship and transported north to the Verdant and then northwards again until he reached his homeland. Transcriptum terminus. Possumus scribe primus, senzo Yakamura, he, him. The water sealer has since retired from venturing and now teaches at the School of Arbitration in Yumaganaiho. When he returned to his northern land, the venturer was delirious, even potential months following his battle with the tiger. The traumas he experienced, I suggest, have muddled his memory and tainted his account. Nevertheless, I give some veracity to the events that have occurred. In the records of the Library of All, in the imperial courthouse of the King under Heaven, the land and people described are not catalogued at all by Doshu Compass Finger, who first charted the land in the steaming seas. This may be first contact between peoples of the north and peoples of the south much removed from us. Let it be known this is the first record of what I am dubbing the people without claws. Possumus scribe secundus, Loretta Sharam, she, her. The fragmentary nature of this account perplexes me. With so little vox dentalis recorded of by we Easterners, everything is a new fragment of lore. I suspect that this shall only provide more queries than answers. I send this writing to the Archivist History to be examined in the Ventures League Lodge in the city of Montegordo in Espagne. This document was never received by the lodge in Montegordo. The vessel carrying this document was pillaged by raiders who left the ship adrift. Coastal villagers sailed out to the vessel for loot when it crashed into the rocky shore and found a compilation of papers. Recognizing the purple, black, and red seal of the Ventures League, the villagers sent the written works to the lodge in Andriodonosos. which was copied and the original sent here to Venetia to be kept within our grand array of works. I, as reigning Archivist Primus, declare the King in Green is too great to be shuttled away in the annals of history. It shall be kept here in my office as of the 12th of Titiari, 5026 AR. Furthermore, I dread sending any of those in my charge into the archives. There is something now that does not linger, but stirs. Reports say that neatly stacked scrolls and pamphlets fall off their shelves. Anessa Kisulim, one of my most perceptive archivists, has noted a quarter-inch of shift in shelves 16, 21, and 56. Note: even without the great weight of documents, each shelf is sturdy oak and weighs upwards of 1,000 pounds. It took many strong oxen to bring the shelves in, and levers and cranes that cost the Ventures League much time to assemble and work. For I have mandated all persons entering the libraries to do so, with one or more companions by their side, carrying arms and speaking prayers of protection at all times. And to all those who were, are, or shall be who read this account, glory to you.
Tales of Mortality is a world-building podcast set in the world of Asenscia, created and owned by Bard over 18 years and counting. It is a fantasy world of horror and madness, a planet racked by mutation and magic, where humanity survives only through itself and the spirit indomitable against horrors natural and unnatural. The Worldbuilder, writer, producer, and artist of the thumbnail is Bard. Me! Below is a transcription of lore, as well as a link to my Instagram, Bard of the Mad Realm, where I share art related to Asenscia. Thank you all for listening to Tales of Mortality. May chaos reign. Bye-bye.